Hello and thank you for joining me on this webinar. My name is Catherine Slater and I am the Engagement Advisor for East Midlands and Yorkshire. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I have worked in the physical activity and sports sector with an emphasis on improving disabled people's opportunity experience over the last 15 years. So hopefully I can draw on some of my knowledge and insights to be able to help deliver the webinar today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be taking you through the effective engagement webinar to understand how to effectively engage disabled people and those with long-term health conditions. This is going to be one of a number of webinars that Activity Alliance are developing to give you insight, knowledge, tools and examples to help you within your work. Okay, let's get started. The outcomes of today's webinar is to give you a better understanding of effective engagement and the considerations that you're going to need to make to really engage with disabled people and those with long-term health conditions. We want to give you some tools to improve your engagement with your audience, depending on who that particularly is, and bearing in mind, yes, we're talking about disabled people and those with long-term health conditions today, but I think to do really good effective engagement, this can be taken across any inactive group. We also want to provide you with examples on how to improve your engagement. So we're going to be taking you through that journey today. What is effective engagement and how can we achieve it? So we don't have a magic wand and there is not one way or one right way to engage with disabled people, the organisations and services that support disabled people. It's going to be flexible. You need a flexible approach to engaging with disabled people and those with long-term health conditions. And you'll have a different approach depending on where that is and who it's with and how they respond to you. So therefore, there is no blueprint around engaging or ensuring that disabled people participate within that. What we do know and what we need to be mindful of is the time and effort that you're going to need to be able to do good engagement, to be effective in that engagement. Because as you'll see as we go through the webinar, some of these things do take some resource, time and capacity to get right to ensure its effectiveness. I want a diagram around the ladder of engagement. Some of you may see other models around ladders of participation, but this is one specific around engagement. And as you'll see there's 5 steps to engagement. And you may look at those steps as individuals, but ideally they are interconnected, and therefore we would like people to get good engagement with disabled people and those with long-term health conditions. So therefore, there's a scale, and we hope from the webinar today that we'll take you into each of those areas, give you a bit more understanding about them, and then also help you move from one area to one step of the ladder to the other, depending on where you feel you are. And this is very much about where you feel you are and how you can get to that next step. And hopefully going through the webinar, you'll get tips and hints and ideas on how to move into that next step. So let's get started. And I'm going to take you from the pages around informing. Informing, most organisations do. We give people, not just disabled people, we give people information about what we do, how we work, who we work with, future plans and initiatives and available opportunities. And we use a lot of our social media, newsletters, external comms, websites to do that. And that's fine, but for me, the question is how accessible are those communications to maximise who you want to engage with? Do you know who you want to engage with? Do you know what audience you're trying to reach? And do you understand the channels, the language, the imagery that really resonates with that particular target audience? And if you don't, we have some resources here that will help you understand better how to reach those people. And we've got lots of lovely fact sheets that split down into those areas that you can see on your screen to help you understand how to make your communications accessible. And that's not just to disabled people. It will give you a better opportunity to engage disabled people and those with long-term health conditions. But we know here at Activity Alliance, by using these principles and being accessible in our communications, you will just generally widen your target audience of who you want to reach and maximising the impact that that can have. So please, by all means, go onto the Activity Alliance website and go into the resources section and have a look, because I'm sure there will be things in those fact sheets that you can help you ensure that that informing stage you are reaching your maximum audience that you want to engage with. Moving on to consulting, I'm sure you're consulting quite a lot. It's very much about collecting the views and opinions from disabled people and or their support networks, organisations, to really get a bit more of an understanding of the needs of disabled people, desires, aspirations, challenges, barriers. And this tends to be people that perhaps have a high interest in what you're doing, but perhaps don't have a large influence within the work, but they are people that you need to really consult with to get a good idea on a wider general base around some of those issues. And as you can see there are lots of different areas in which you can consult with people, and obviously that's not an exclusive list. There are more ways and innovative ways that you can do that, but there's just some as a suggestion that you can use. A good example, they delivered on engagement days, specifically inviting disabled people and the organisations that support disabled people and those with long-term health conditions to really come together with the sports sector to really understand what works, what doesn't work, what the challenges are around some of the issues for disabled people not being active. And that went in to inform their county plan. And what it also gave them there was really a network, a group of people that in future that they can consult with moving forward. So many people, there are many examples out there like Active Surreys to which you might have some of those networks in your area, and I would advise that you kind of look to see if you can strengthen them and or tap into them to be able to do consulting effectively. Moving on to involving, this is very much about people, communities to ensure needs are met. So it's very much moving from the consulting stage very much into involving them, and the way that you really involve them is that by not only hearing what they have to say and gaining their understanding around barriers or challenges or things that are working well, but it's also making sure that you actually take that information into account, act upon it, and the feedback is then given back to them so they can see that you are actually physically involving them in the process. So therefore, it's more than just engagement days, which Active Surrey do, and it's very much around relationship building. It's very much around the partnerships, the forums, the meetings, the networks, and where they actually filter into in the bigger picture of development of activities, projects, programs, and services, and being able to evidence that. So these stakeholders at this stage might have low interest, but have high influence. So again, a quick example of that is disabled people's user-led organisations very much sit in what we call the non-sport sector, but work perhaps in the voluntary community and independent sector. A lot of their priorities around health and social care, but obviously physical activity can be a part of that world, but they may not have the knowledge and understanding. But what they will have is massive traction with disabled people in that locality. And all we need to do is really work with them and give them knowledge and understanding about what sport and physical activity you're trying to achieve in that particular area, and take them on that journey, because they could actually have quite a big influence on how disabled people engage with you. So therefore, I would strongly look at working on those networks and those contacts, and looking at whether you're consulting, as we've spoken about before, or actually whether you're really truly involving them. Nottingham City have done this very well. They had a joint approach around their Listen and Learn forum. They wanted to improve their leisure and sports services offer across the city. but felt they were doing consulting, but they weren't actually gaining much impact from doing that work. It wasn't seeing an increase in participation. So what they actually did was work with the Nottingham Community Voluntary Services who had the trust in some of those organisations to develop a disability sport network. And what they basically did through that network is incentivise people to go and test facilities and give feedback. And that then informed the development of plans and new projects and new programmes and new activities. And that's led to quite a positive impact for them across the city. Again, all these examples that I'm mentioning now, Google the titles and the locality and you'll find the actual projects. So go and have a look if you want more information. Moving on to collaborating. This is very much kind of heading towards the gold standard on our ladder. So this is very much where we want people to be. We want to look at organisations and people working in partnership with disabled people and communities to design and develop programmes or opportunities and make it into real action. So it's going beyond asking for opinions, it's going beyond asking for what's good, what's bad, how can we work differently. It's really starting to co-design and involve people in the development and potentially delivery of programmes. And again, this helps with empowering disabled people, getting them to realise, not just disabled people, but the organisations that you may well involve in that process that support disabled people and people with long-term health conditions. But it starts to have more meaning and it starts to give disabled people a voice. But it's also the success rate of doing co-design and co-delivery is certainly something that's going to be bigger than if you go off and do it on your own, because people have bought into the concept, they've been a part of it, they've gone along the journey, they can see where the need has come from, and therefore disabled people are incredibly invested at this stage of engagement. So therefore they need to be treated in a way that reflects that input and value. So involving them in that delivery will be absolutely essential. Another fantastic example is Gloucestershire Active Inclusion Network, or GAIN as we shorten it. I would really advise that you go along and have a look at their website and just type in Gloucestershire Active Inclusion Network. They're doing some great work around co-delivery and collaboration. It was developed, the GAIN network again was developed in response in a gap in some of the county's partnership boards and networks to discuss physical activity, disability inclusion. They didn't have the expertise around the table. They didn't know all the real local challenges. So they brought together a network, again, specifically targeting people. They delivered it over kind of 3 times a year. They meet roughly, had task and finish groups around certain project-based things. However, what they did is they brought disabled people and disabled people's organisations, sport clubs, commissioners and local funders into one room and discussed to create and drive participation in the sport and physical activity agenda for disabled people. They also kind of included people like health and social care. And this was really quite essential to kind of bring people in a collaborative way to talk about the shared outcomes. So that's taking it up to the next stage, to look at the shared outcomes. So where was the cross-cutting outcomes across all of those kind of sectors and organisations where they could work more collaboratively together? Because GAIN's been running now for quite a number of years, and again, this is where I say things take time. These weren't instant networks and processes. GAIN grew by approaching obviously the local funders to look for prospective projects, so that now they identified that what the priorities were, they needed the funding to perhaps deliver some of those projects. And that again attracted more people into the network who had a great interest, because they could see that actually we could get some things funded, we could also pull resources and maximise impact. Many of the organisations began to use that opportunity to learn from each other and access other groups and sessions, but the purpose of it was to collaborate, come together, because there was strength in the shared outcomes across bids. The GAIN network was also integral to the active Gloucestershire business planning and it's all informed their future objectives, both short and long-term aims of their work, specifically for disabled people. So what's come out of that network has informed a county partnership collaborative approach to that. And this is what it looks like. So what's going to happen for GAIN now is the county sports partnership at the time probably led on the development of that network, but because of that journey that it's been on, they're now taking a step back as being the lead organisation, and instead they're supporting members and the steering groups and the committees within it to take ownership of the network, and they're creating a kind of a social movement alongside this to enable its long-term success and longevity. They're still going to give a level of support, but as you can see from that diagram there, where the disability steering group sits, where GAIN sits, so they've got an influence at all levels and champions. There's still some work to be done, particularly around the Gloucestershire steering group, but generally they've nearly got all the steps in place to hit that gold standard. Hopefully you can be able to see that from that diagram. So the very, very gold standard is devolving. So if you think you're at this stage, then that's absolutely fantastic. Please tell us more. We want to know about you. If you've got everything in place to be at the top of the ladder, we are really keen to hear from you on how you're achieving that. What by being at the top of the ladder, it means that decision making is actually led by disabled people and their support networks when it comes to creating or improving opportunities to engage in physical activity locally. Now, the strongest example I can give you around this is probably a Midlands citizen panel. And what you'll see there is that they've got a number of different, they've got kind of 3 strands. And what this does is give disabled people a voice that influences right from local right through to policy. And because they're working in kind of a dual government way, that voice is actually quite integral at all levels. So what they've got here, if you look to the right of your screen in the red box, you'll see there's a charitable place-based organisational influencers and networkers. This is very much about the networks that are already kind of sat there. Day centres, social groups, charitable groups, care homes, friends clubs, etc. They might be limited in the way that they work, therefore that network is going to facilitate a shared way that they can combine their thoughts and successes and even their concerns wider around some of the issues. And this might not be specific to physical activity as such, as in a direct link. This could be around transport, it could be around safety, it could be around lots of other issues, because what they're doing at this level is looking at all the wider determinants around why people perhaps won't be physically active or what's stopping them being physically active. So therefore, this is about gaining that voice at all and understanding those and unpicking those challenges. In the middle, you've then got a network called the Citizens Network, and that's where ideas will start to develop and they'll start to co-design opportunities. And you may well get some people from the previous network, the charitable, sit on the Citizens Network, but not necessarily, because again, their work might be limited, their resources and capacity might be limited, but there will be a link between them, whether it's through a paid worker and or through representatives sitting on either groups. So that Citizens Network is certainly around a specific expert group of disabled people sitting on there, and that will be kind of a check and challenge to some of the strategic level down to local level around regional decisions and programmes and developments. And they will also support the commission of future funds focused around disability and inclusive practice. Now to the left, you'll see there's 4 boxes. And what these are, for those that perhaps work in sports development, you may know about some of the groups that operate from very much either a district/county level. So, and you may have a strategic network, but you'll have potentially an operational network that sits under it. So those 2 boxes at the bottom are very much perhaps a county based or district based or below. So in the West Midlands Combined Authority, they've got one called Include Me, which is kind of an operational network. And then above it, they've got more of a strategic network, and that's just kind of distinguishing the different players and the different levels of influence. And then above that, you will have the operational West Midlands operational group and strategic group. And again, that's for people just with slightly different remits that might sit on that regional level. Each of those groups will all be represented in that citizens network alongside this expert panel of disabled people. So that's where the Check and Challenge comes from, the Citizens Network, to really ensure that voice of disabled people are at the heart of all the future developments and decision making that actually happens. So again, this might be a more obvious example to use because it is a devolved government situation. This can be achieved if you look at the process and principles around how do we get that authentic voice, that collaboration, going back over the steps of the ladder and reviewing. If you've done all those pieces, you can get that voice, and this is basically just the pinnacle of what that looks like. So the ladder, we hope by taking you through those stages of that ladder, that's giving you an indication to the different levels of engagement you can have. Bearing in mind, not all of those steps you might tap into depending on who the stakeholders are that you want to engage with. Because sometimes it will be right just to do the informing stage. But if you truly want an authentic voice and engagement of disabled people and a successful project and development, you may well need to consider all of those steps and the differences between the steps. What we have got here is Activity Alliance's resources that might well help you with some of that engagement as well. We've got the On the Road resource, we've got our engagement resources and videos, some of our Talk to Me research and principles in action that really go into understanding what disabled people want. You've got your mapping information around Sport England. So they're perhaps more organisational based resources that may well help you. But we've really got good resources for individuals to do better engagement with individuals around being physically active. And there are to Be an Active Guide, and we've also got some videos that you can use. And that's everything. I hope that those resources will help you. Please, by all means, go along to our website, and also please go and visit, perhaps Google some of the examples that I've given you there throughout the webinar to go and find out more detail if you feel it would be helpful. Thank you very much for joining me today. I hope we have met those outcomes at the beginning, and you will go away and start to do better engagement with disabled people and those with long-term health conditions.